What is good, guys? I figured I'd do this video real quick. A lot of people requested it, and I wanted to make sure I got it out there before the draft actually started. Um, the one that I did last year was way more detailed, and it was like a 15-minute video or something. I'm gonna keep this one a lot shorter, and I'm just gonna do my top ten players, not necessarily what teams I think are going to pick what players or what the order I think will be. I'm going to pick the top 10 best available players in my personal opinion. And actually, as kind of annoying as he can be, I think Chad Ford has had one of the best lists that I've seen so far. But yeah, I'm going to do my top 10, and then I'm also going to discuss sleepers and players that I think are way overrated. As you can see, I'm rocking the Larry Bird jersey. I'm ready for the draft, man. But, alright, the player that I think is going to end up being the best player in this draft, and someone that, not surprising to me, has been moving up rapidly in the last few days, is Michael Carter-Williams. He's my number one available player. To me, he kind of reminds me of what I thought Sean Livingston could have been before the injuries. A very tall, lanky point guard, pretty good shooter as well. Quick, sees the floor well. I think it's very, very rare to find players like him. So, in my opinion, he's got the most potential. He was only a sophomore this year, so I think that he's got a lot of room for growth. He's definitely my number one best available player. Number two, I would say, is Trey Burke. Now, I think Trey Burke is ridiculously clutch, number one, but he's so solid on top of it. Like, to me, he reminds me of a better version of AC Law. If you guys remember AC Law from Texas A&M, just killer and clutch, but killer in crunch time, I should say. But he didn't really pan out too well in the NBA. I think Trey Burke's a little bigger, has a little bit better shot, and is a little bit more consistent. And he also won all the Player of the Year awards. I think that he is a very safe pick. Number three, I think, is best available is Victor Oladipo. I think Victor Oladipo is not a great shooter at this point, and I think the comparisons to Dwayne Wade are not right. I think the comparisons to Luol Deng are not right. To me, I can't think of anybody I would compare him to. He has some vague similarities to Dwayne Wade. He's athletic, he's springy, but the thing about Victor Oladipo is he's kind of a utility guard. He gets a lot of rebounds, gets a lot of putbacks. I can't really say what position he is. I mean, he's a guard. I don't know if he's going to be a shooting guard, kind of a combo shooting guard, small forward, but I just think that he's a very good utility player for your team. Someone kind of like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, but I actually think he's better than Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Number four, I have Ben McLemore. A lot of people make comparisons to Ray Allen, which, again, I think is a little ridiculous, but he is a very good shooter, had a pretty good NCAA postseason, and I think he will end up being a very good. I don't think he'll be a all-star caliber player, but I think he'll be very solid, and he's a safe pick. Number five, I have Otto Porter. I haven't seen a ton of video on him, but he's kind of a bigger forward. It's kind of in the same vein as Carmelo, except a little bit more athletic. I think that he'll end up being another pretty solid player, but I don't know what the ceiling is on him. This is overall kind of a weak draft, but number 6 is I have Nerlens Noel. Now, he could be a number 1 type player, but my 2 issues with him are the surgery, number 1. He's a 7-footer who had an ACL surgery, and that just has Greg Oden written all over it. Even though Greg Oden had different injuries, all that sort of stuff, this isn't a good sign for a big man. And number 2, even when he was healthy, Kentucky wasn't winning games. I thought it was interesting. Their whole team's comprised of McDonald's All-Americans, yet they were an average college team. So, again, that kind of took me back a little bit. Like, if this guy's that good, why are they not winning? You know what I'm saying? And they had a good roster, too. So, he's my number 6 pick. Number 7 is I got C.J. McCollum from Lehigh, and he kind of reminds me a little bit of, in terms of players, Steph Curry. In terms of story, more Damian Lillard, where he kind of comes from a small school. But one interesting stat I saw was his true shooting percentage in every shooting category in terms of different spots on the floor, three-point line, etc. He was better than Steph Curry in every single category compared to Steph Curry's last year at Davidson. Now, to me, that's amazing. And then I looked him up on ESPN. He shot 50-something% from the three-point line, and he shot almost 5 threes a game. So, you're shooting that type of percentage, you can shoot the ball. I don't care if you're shooting with nobody guarding you. That's good. So, that's my number 7, best available. My number 8, I've got Tim Hardaway Jr. I think that he's extremely underrated at this point. And if you want more of a comparison to Luol Deng, I think he's kind of a similar type player to Luol Deng. Tall, wing player that handles the ball well, pretty solid shooter. I think that he's being really overlooked at this point. Number 9, I've got Kelly Olynyk. I think that he is probably the safest bet as far as big men go. He can run the floor. He isn't super springy, but he is pretty athletic for a 7-footer. In number 10, I've got Alex Len. I think he's being extremely overrated at this point. About a month or 2 ago, he wasn't even listed in most drafts in the top 10. Now people are saying he could be the number 1 pick. It's one of those things where I'm always hesitant to rate a guy high if they didn't do anything in college. It's kind of like Brandon Jennings. I was hesitant to think he would be a good NBA player just because of how crappy his stats were overseas. And I've kind of felt that about some guys in the past. Last year I was wrong about Andre Drummond, but I have been right about a lot of these people. But Andre Drummond, I will say, I was wrong about him. I didn't think he'd pan out to be as great as he has been. But Alex Len, he's got high upside, but he's also got bust potential. Someone that I think is another person along those lines is Steven Adams, giant player from, I think it's either New Zealand or Australia, played at Pitt. And you're 7'1", 7'2", top 10 high school player, and you don't do anything. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say you didn't do anything, but don't do much at college. It's just like, how good is this person really going to be? So I'm kind of hesitant on him. Another player that I think has been overrated but has kind of fallen down to earth recently is Cody Zeller. A lot of people have him outside the top 10 now, and I think that right around that 10-12 area is good for him. You pick him in the top 10, I think you're stretching. I think Shane Larkin is a player who is being very overrated. I wouldn't take him in the first round. I think that people saw all his athletic statistics at the combine and were like, "Oh, he's going to be this good point guard," but he's like barely 5'10", and the only player I can think of who is similar to him, who's made it work in the past 10, 15 years, is Ty Lawson. And at this point, Shane Larkin is not Ty Lawson. So I think people are stretching with him. I think Gorgie Dang is a player that could end up being very, very good. I think he's a sleeper at this point. Very good defensive player. Another person along those lines is Jeff Withey from Kansas. He's not as athletic as Gorgie Dang, but similar type of player. He's one of those guys that could be a sleeper. And even further down, similar type of player, Trevor Mbakwe. I'm a graduate of University of Illinois, big University of Illinois fan. So I watch all their games, see all the Big Ten, so I'm very familiar with all the players from the Big Ten. And Trevor Mbakwe is an athletic monster. And if there's one thing that is valuable in the NBA, it is athleticism. I didn't think Josh Smith would be that good seeing him in high school, but just strictly based on his athletic ability alone, it has carried him significantly in the NBA. Someone that I think I wouldn't touch with a 100-foot pole is Deshaun Thomas. He is the definition of one-dimensional player. He can do nothing except shoot, and he's not a efficient shooter. He just is a high-frequency shooter, and that is the only thing he is good at. He's slow, he can't pass, he can't defend. If I'm drafting in the first or second round, I'm not drafting him. A sleeper, my last two sleepers, and then I'll end this video. Ryan Kelly is one sleeper I have. He is projected at the end of the second round at this point, but he's almost 7 feet tall. He is pretty darn slow, and he isn't that good defensively, but he can shoot the lights out. And he's got a pretty good basketball IQ. So if I'm a mid-second round team, or even an early second round team, I'm using that pick on him, or someone that I'm very familiar with, Brandon Paul. Now, I think Brandon Paul's biggest knock is consistency. He's very well-spoken, and everything else is, in terms of basketball ability, is off the charts. He has almost a 7-foot wingspan, and he's 6'4". He's got a 40-inch vertical, shot 40-something percent from the three-point line, I believe, and he put up 40-some points, like 45 points against Ohio State his junior year, and I think his two biggest knocks are consistency, and he also, when he goes to the lane, to the basket, he's always flopping, kind of like Ginobili type flops. He's going to have to be stronger around the basket, but I think the potential is clearly there. If I'm an early to mid-second round team, I'm definitely using the pick on either him or Ryan Kelly. So those are my top 10 best available players and my sleepers and overrated players. Let me know what you guys think, and of course this ends up being 14 minutes, but I guess there's just that many players to talk about and not much to talk about. So, alright guys, hope you enjoyed the draft tonight. As always, take it easy, rate, comment, subscribe, and peace.